Hello everyone, my name is Aaron and welcome to my channel. I've been watching a lot of YouTube content lately about atheism and agnosticism. Most of it from people who were formerly Christians who went through a process that the community calls deconstruction, which is kind of a fancy way of saying they left the faith. And that content has resonated with me because I used to be a Bible-believing fundamentalist evangelical born-again Christian, and I'm not anymore. I myself have deconstructed, and I found that community really has resonance with me, and so I decided that I would contribute to the community and to maybe people who might be considering leaving the faith or who might already be there but just want to find support. I decided I'd share my story. So here we go. I was raised in a culturally Christian home. We never really took our religious faith all that seriously. I was taught that we celebrate Jesus' birthday at Christmas and we celebrate his death and resurrection at Easter. But my family never really went to church unless my parents got a bug up their butt about it a couple times a year. And when I say my family, I want to be clear that I'm referring to my mother and my stepfather and the blended family therein. My father was a non-custodial parent. He didn't have a whole lot to do with my upbringing, but that's a topic for a later date. Anyway, so I was brought up in a culturally Christian family, and that lasted until I was about 15. When I was 15, one of my brothers and we both got religion. From different churches. We were involved in different youth groups in different churches, but both of us embraced this born-again, salvation by faith, fundamentalist evangelical Christianity. Now, I want to be clear that these things exist on a continuum. There are Christian churches that, in their doctrine, in their practice, in their politics, are considerably more extreme than the churches that my brother and I were involved with. They were still extreme fundamentalists, and they believed that you had to be baptized by immersion or you were going to face eternal separation from God. Both churches, both denominations, I would say, have kind of a weak view of hell compared to a lot of other Christians. The denomination that we were involved in didn't believe in speaking in tongues or handling snakes or faith healing. We were taught to regard televangelists as, charlatans at worst, or at best, genuine Christians who were just kind of doing the wrong thing the wrong way. But nevertheless, we were both heavily involved in that lifestyle. We both went to youth groups all the time. We both went to church every Sunday, Sunday school, the whole bit. And my parents at the time weren't particularly enthusiastic about my brothers and my religious, newfound religion, I guess. But in the main, I think they figured it was a good thing rather than a bad thing. But anyway. The rest of my family came on board probably 10, 15 years later. Started going to a church in the same denomination that my brother and I went to. And that's where they are all now, except for me. They all still go to the same church in the same denomination from which my brother and I got religion. Anyway, so yeah, I was in it to win it as a Christian teen in the 80s. I proselytized to my classmates, the whole bit. I was expected to go to Bible college, and I did. And then after Bible college, I was in the ministry for a few months before I realized that I am absolutely not the type of person who makes a good minister. And so I got a secular quote-unquote job, but I continued to minister as a lay minister in my church, working with the youth ministry, the children's ministry, the whole bit. In Bible college, I was taught a form of biblical literalism like I said, not as extreme as other denominations. We didn't speak in tongues. We didn't handle snakes. We didn't believe in prophets, that, people had prophetic gifts or anything like that. But we did believe, we were taught that the earth was only 6,000 years old, that, these miracles described in the Bible actually happened, that evolution was a farce, and that, the world was created in literal 6 days, all of that. I started to question my faith. Well, let me back up. Let me say that there wasn't a point at which before that day I was a Christian and after that day I wasn't. The thing was a process, and it took years. But the thing that started me on my journey of questioning my faith took place when I was about 35. A woman that I worked with and her family, 8 children, were coming home from somewhere, and the woman and her husband and 7 of the 8 children were killed in a terrible accident. And on top of that, the family was Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so 2 things I struggled with that event. One was that, how could a loving God allow a mother and father and 7 of their children to be killed in a gruesome accident? And the one who survived, to me it was even more cruel that she survived, because she lost her parents and 7 of her siblings. And then the other thing that motivated me to question my faith was the fact that, according to the teachings of my denomination, those people weren't really Christians. They believed in a version of Christianity, but it was the wrong version. And so they were going to spend eternity separated from God. Again, my denomination had kind of a weak, wishy-washy view of hell, and largely leaned towards what Bible scholars would call annihilationism. Just basically the belief that, if you're not a Christian, after you die, there's just nothing, which is essentially what, atheists and agnostics believe. After you die, there's nothing. But anyway, I stuck with it. I shoved those doubts into the back of my mind. Another thing that was a major domino that fell on my faith was, one night a local astronomy organization held a viewing party at a local park, and I went, and I'd always been interested in astronomy all my life. I went and I saw Saturn through a telescope. Now, I had known what Saturn had looked like. I had read books about it. I had seen images of it. It wasn't a new thing to me. But when I saw it through the telescope and its rings and 4 of its moons, I was just struck by the realization that I had always been taught that God created the earth in 6 literal days, and that all evidence that the earth is old, erosion in the rocks, canyons, the fossil record, layers, the fact that galaxies are, untold light years away. We're all just, God had created a mature, fully functional universe, and it was there for His glory. And I just remember that day thinking that if that was true, then what that meant was that when God created the heavens and the earth, He just yeeted Saturn into space, drew rings around it, plopped a bunch of moons around it, and then sat back knowing that, it would be another 45 or so many thousand years before some Italian developed a telescope that could see them. And then suddenly it would reveal His glory again. I just found the concept ridiculous. Over the next few years, other dominoes started to fall. I realized that the idea that evolution is real and that the fossil record teaches that all life evolved and that humans evolved from a common ancestor was incontrovertible. I'd been taught that, evolutionary science was a lie, that it was a scheme by the devil to lead me away from God, when in fact it was just the truth of the matter. Evolution was and is true. The earth is not 6,000 years old, it's 4.5 billion years old. And then I started to look at the miracles in the Bible. There's a passage in, I think, Judges, where it says the sun stood still in the sky for a day. if that were the case, then that would mean that the Earth stopped rotating for a day, which, by the way, if the Earth were to stop rotating, everything on it would be yeeted into space, and we'd all die. So maybe God used his God magic to, just stop the Earth but keep everything in place. And then, the Chinese, who were alive at that time and keeping records, and, they would have had a 24-hour period of night, being, on another part of the Earth at the time, and they failed to keep any records of it. So all these things that were in the Bible that just didn't match up with reality just started to wear on me. And I just had to admit to myself that it wasn't true. And the end of the line for me one day, I remember it specifically, it was the south side of Springfield, Illinois. I had stopped going to church by that point for a few months. My heart just wasn't in it. And one day I just decided to drive around to clear my head, and I just realized that I didn't believe anymore. And I had to admit that to myself. That's been about 10 years ago. Where I am now, I'm completely deconstructed. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe that there isn't a God either. I'm not an atheist. I consider myself agnostic. And in a later video, I'll talk about the differences between agnosticism and atheism and why I landed on the agnostic side of the equation. But anyway, that's where I am now. I still have a good relationship with my family. They're very religious, but they didn't disown me or anything like that. We just have kind of an unspoken agreement not to talk about it. And so I'm fortunate in that regard, because I know a lot of former Christians or former Muslims or, former Hindus or whatever, formerly religious people, their deconstruction cost them their families. It didn't cost me my family. It cost me a lot of other things, which is also another topic for another video. But fortunately, it didn't cost me my family. So that's where I am. That's how I got deconstructed. I do want to be clear that I don't consider myself an evangelist for agnosticism. I'm not going to try to talk anybody out of their faith. If you want to believe, that's fantastic. You do you. But if you are a religious person who's having questions or having thoughts, or you're, in some point in the process of your deconstruction, or if you're fully deconstructed, I wanted to let you know that you're not alone. You look around on social media and you'll see a wide community of former believers in Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or any number of other religions, and they don't believe anymore, and that's okay. It's okay to not believe. And so that's, if you're in that group, then you're my target audience. If you're still a Christian, that's fine. I'm not going to debate with you in the comments. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise either. I've told my story for the sake of telling my story, not for the sake of converting you. But anyway, I want to let you know that, if you are in the process of constructing or are considering deconstructing, I just want to let you know that you're good enough. Who you are is good enough. You were born fine. You don't need to be born a second time. You're not going to go to hell, because hell doesn't exist. And you may leave behind some things that you'll miss. And in a future video, I'm going to talk about some things that I left behind that I miss. But you're going to be okay. So anyway, that's the short version of my story of deconstruction. In later videos, I'm going to talk more about the faith group that I left. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I regret having left behind, that I miss from my days as a Christian. I'm going to talk about some things that I don't miss from my days as a Christian. I'm going to talk about purity culture. I'm going to talk about some of the controversies in Christianity. But this is my introduction to where I want to take this channel, or at least one direction that I want to take this channel moving forward. I do have some plans for some other videos that aren't about atheism or agnosticism or religion or spirituality or anything like that. But for this series, this is my introduction. And it's been an honor to share my story with you. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. I'll give you an honest answer. Again, I'm not going to debate with you. If you want to come at me with hate comments, that's fine. I'm not going to respond. But I do want to thank you for your time. And please give this video a like and subscribe. Thank you.